Alright, so since balance patch season is upon us once more, I've had quite a few requests to make another video listing how I'd rebalance all the characters in the game, and I'm actually not going to make that video because, to be honest, I think system changes are much more direly needed than character changes right now. So rather than make a big character change list, today I am going to talk about the system mechanic changes I'd personally like to see in Street Fighter 6's March update. Also, before we get started, I'd really appreciate if you guys could hit that subscribe button. If you don't subscribe, I will cast a spell that makes all of your cash get rejected and spit out when using vending machines for the rest of your life. You have been warned. Okay, so I'm kind of just going to go through this mechanic by mechanic. So the very first thing I'm going to talk about is drive reversal. So I've got a few suggestions for drive reversal. In my opinion, drive reversal I think would benefit from being slightly faster. And I'd also like to see the startup unified between both versions, because right now, one of the weird things about drive reversal is it has inconsistent startup between block stun drive reversal and wake up drive reversal. So right now, out of block stun, drive reversal is 20 frames startup, but if you do it on wake up, it's 18 frames. I'd like to see drive reversal just made a little bit faster to kind of like 16, 17 frames, so it's still fairly slow, like much slower than an EXDP or anything. But the reason that I want it to be a little bit faster is there are so many things and so many pressure strings in this game which basically are immune to drive reversal completely. You can literally get a knockdown in this game and meaty people with heavy normals and still be completely immune to drive reversal, which I think is a bit crazy. So, like this. I don't really think heavies should be immune to drive reversal on wake up, so I don't want to see it made much faster, but I think it probably should be a little bit faster. And it's also very predictable because you can only do it on wake up or from block stun, which also adds a layer of weakness to it. Another change I would like to see for drive reversal is I think this should also refund half a bar of drive on a successful drive reversal. And the reason for that one is that the argument a lot of people make for drive reversal is that if you drive reversal successfully on something like this, then in theory, you should come out a bar of drive ahead of your opponent, right? Because your opponent spent 3 bars on the DRC and you spent 2 bars on the drive reversal. So like on paper, you sort of think, well, drive reversal already comes out on top here in terms of the overall drive exchange. But the problem is, you also lose drive from the initial blocked normal, and this is especially obnoxious against characters with good special cancelable heavies. So like, for example, if Ryu does something like, I don't know, stand fierce DRC and you drive reversal it, what should be a 1 bar advantage ends up almost being even because you lose so much drive blocking the heavy as well. So I think you should get half a bar back to make this into an actual 3 bars versus 2 bars exchange. So those are the 2 buffs I would give to drive reversal. I should also say, I don't want this thing being any safer. I've seen a lot of people suggest making drive reversal safer on block, because right now it's -6. A lot of characters can cash out on a -6 and do insane amounts of damage right now. So I have seen some people say it should be like -5, -4. I don't agree with those takes. I would rather it be high risk, high reward. I like the kind of, if I use it correctly, I should be rewarded, and if I use it incorrectly, my opponent should be rewarded. So I think it should still stay really unsafe, but it should just be a little bit faster and also a little bit more rewarding on hit, but still very punishing on block. So that's my suggested changes to drive reversal. Moving on to everyone's favorite mechanic, it's time to talk about drive rush. So a couple of changes I would make to drive rush. I think every single character and every single move performed out of a drive rush should have an expanded hurt box. I don't know how they could do this on a programming level, but I think basically while you're in a drive rush, or if you're performing a move enhanced by a drive rush, basically you should have like an extra chunk of hurt box in front of you so that you're much easier to intercept. Because right now, a lot of characters can be very hard to check on their drive rushes, even if you correctly read and react to them. Also, on top of that, I think drive rush should also be in a forced punish counter state. So, as it is right now, drive rush will get you counter hit. 2 reasons I think this makes sense. Number 1, it just makes the punish that you get better. Like, if you intercept this, if you get a forced punish counter, it means that you get a more rewarding combo for hitting someone out of a drive rush. And number two, and I think the underrated aspect of this, is that by making it a punish counter, that means that you will also inflict drive gauge damage to your opponent, because a lot of people's complaints right now about Drive Rush is that it's too cheap. Like, you can just yeet yourself at your opponent and it only costs 1 bar of drive. And even if I intercept this right now, notice that because this is a counter hit, I don't actually inflict any drive gauge damage for landing this intercepting stand fierce. Whereas if you made this a punish counter, I would get a whole extra bar of drive gauge damage for intercepting this with stand fierce. So as well as the extra damage, it would also be more punishing in terms of drive costs without actually affecting combos. Because I have seen some people suggest making Drive Rush like 2 bars to use, and that would fuck up a lot of combos and stuff, but I think that'll just mess up the overall meter economy of the game. I think it's much better to just make it so that you lose extra drive if you get hit by an intercepting normal. So those are my suggestions for Drive Rush. Up next, Drive Impact. I would not change a single thing about Drive Impact. Getting hit by a YOLO DI can be annoying, but that's just kind of how the game is to me. I don't think it needs changing. Okay, next thing I want to talk about on my list of system mechanics to change is drive gauge damage on block. As I'm sure you guys know, when you block in Street Fighter 6, you lose drive gauge. And heavier attacks tend to do more drive gauge damage on block compared to light attacks. And I think this mechanic needs to exist. I'm not going to get rid of this. I absolutely think you should lose drive gauge for blocking. My suggestion here is I think true block strings should scale drive gauge damage for each additional move. So in the same way that when you land a combo, the first hit will do, say, 100% damage, the second hit will do, say, I don't know, 80% damage. As you do a combo, the damage scales down. And I think the same should also be true for drive gauge damage if you maintain a true block string, because stuff like this, like a lot of characters can just do like true block strings. Something like this, for example, this is a completely safe string. This is also a true block string. You get like 1.5 bars of drive gauge damage for like a string like this. Other than drive reversaling, there's not really anything you can do about it because it's a true block string. So my suggestion is the first stand fierce here should do like the full drive gauge damage on block, like a full 1/2 bar. The second one should do maybe like 75% of its base drive gauge damage, and then the third hit should do like 50%, etc. So it should scale down. And a big part of this is this would also have a noticeable impact on a lot of the most obnoxious level 2s in this game. So you may have noticed a trend with a lot of the strongest level 2s is that they put you into situations where even blocking feels terrible. And a good example of that is something like Blanca's level 2. So like, this is a true block string from start to finish. And it leaves Blanca +7 on block. And that does nearly 3 bars of drive gauge damage, and he still has half of his level 2 left. And the problem is that, like I say, the only defensive mechanic you can use here is drive reversal, but that will also cost you 2 bars of drive. So there's like, right now there's like no good outcome. You either block the sequence and lose all your drive gauge, or you drive reversal and lose all your drive gauge. It feels kind of bad that there's not really anything you can do about this. So again, I think a sequence like this, which currently does nearly 3 bars of drive gauge damage, if it implemented the system that I'm suggesting, that would be shaved down to about like maybe 1.5 bars under those conditions. And this would also apply to things like JP's level 2 would do significantly less drive gauge damage. Guile's level 2 would do significantly less drive gauge damage. Just means that the game is a bit more interactive and you can't just put your opponent into an endless block string and attack their drive gauge mindlessly. Okay, next thing on my list is throw loops, which I've obviously talked about many times before. So for throw loops, I've split this up into 3 different changes, which I have labeled here as number 1, the Capcom fix, number 2, the community fix, and number 3, the wildcard fix. So I'm offering 3 different solutions here, evaluating them on which I think is likely to happen based on Capcom's approach, which is the most common I've seen recommended by the community, and the one that I think is potentially game-breaking, but also potentially really interesting, which I've called the wildcard fix. So the Capcom fix is basically keep throw loops, but lock them all behind Drive Rush. This is a thing that they did start doing with some of the newer DLC characters. So throw loops would remain in the game, but every character would have to spend at least a bar of drive to maintain them. This is what I'm calling the Capcom fix, because this is basically like the least complicated way of trying to tone down throw loops without fundamentally like addressing any of the core gameplay throw. The community fix, the one that I've seen most often recommended, is basically just remove throw loops universally and give every character the same kind of Oki that Chun-Li and Honda have right now. So, in theory, no character would have a throw loop, but every character would be just barely plus enough that they could like walk up and press a button if they suspected you were gonna mash. Basically, every character's throw pressure turns into like Chun-Li and Honda's current throw situation, which is a more severe nerf, and that has potentially more gameplay consequences, but it would actively remove throw loops altogether. And then number 3, and this is the one that I came up with as the wildcard solution, adding a brand new kind of wake up, which is wake up forward roll, which would be visually similar to Street Fighter Cross Tekken, if you guys have never seen that before. So as you see here, in Street Fighter Cross Tekken, it was possible to forward roll on wake up like this. It was a big part of that game's wake up situation. The idea being that forward roll would actually have recovery on wake up, okay? So rather than just waking up and being actionable, if you did a forward roll, you would have 1 or 2 frames of vulnerability after waking up. So it would be a very high risk option, but in exchange, it would allow you to completely escape meaty throws. So again, it's kind of like a high risk, high reward wake up option. The benefit of the wildcard, the wake up forward roll, is that you wouldn't need to make any changes to throw Oki, and theoretically throw loops could kind of still exist if you mind game your opponent, but your opponent would also have a high risk, high reward wake up option to escape that. The bad side of introducing the wildcard, the wake up forward roll, is that it would be a massive alteration to the overall knockdown Oki game. Not just for throws, it would affect huge aspects of the metagame, would probably have a ton of knock-on effects. It would extend to like pressure, set play, all kinds of aspects of Street Fighter 6 to the core. So yeah, that's why I've listed it as the wildcard solution. It would be a very complicated thing to implement and would massively alter the overall knockdown Oki mind game, but it would also make throw loops not really a problem anymore. Okay, last thing on my list of system mechanic changes. Aerial moves with forced knockdown state should also be forced punish counters. What the hell does that mean? What did he just say? Okay, so this one is a personal pet peeve of mine. I don't think anyone on the planet gives a shit about this except for me. I would like to see this change regardless, if I'm being selfish. A lot of moves in this game have a property known as forced knockdown, which is that if you get hit out of these moves, you get put into a juggle state, and it says forced knockdown like this. And this trait is most often applied to things that alter your air trajectory, mainly dive kicks. And I think the idea behind this mechanic existing is by putting the opponent into a forced juggle state, it gives extra reward to anti-airing your opponent out of strong moves like dive kicks. And in theory, I suppose the idea is you can get a combo off this. But there's a slight problem, which is that it's almost never that you can actually convert off this for 2 reasons. One, a lot of the time you are way too far away to actually pick up a juggle here. And number 2, it's incredibly hard to hit confirm this. Like, you can do Tatsu here. That will work. You have to hit confirm this instantly, because if they did a regular jump normal and not a dive kick, then this will happen. You'll just whiff your Tatsu and die. Like, you have to not only anti-air successfully, you also have a very extremely narrow window to not only confirm the anti-air was successful, but also that it was a counter hit and that it forced them into a forced knockdown situation. Like, it's a very difficult situation to convert off, and I almost never see people successfully take advantage of this juggle state on dive kicks. 99% of the time, when someone gets a forced knockdown anti-air, all they do is they just use the knockdown to kind of get Oki afterwards. And even then, a lot of characters still can't take advantage of that because you need a fast drive rush to do it. So for example, like, Yeah. So you can't really get great pressure here if your drive rush is slow. So my suggestion here is, as well as this being a forced knockdown, I think it should also be a forced punish counter. And before you scream at me, this is too much of a nerf for dive kick characters, I want to point out that this property already exists. They have already done this, but they only did it to one move. So Capcom made the sensible decision. This is actually one of my favorite balance changes they did. They decided a while ago that DJ's jump down light kick, the knee shot, is way too spammable. And this move is still really good. Like, this is still a really important part of DJ's game plan. It's super plus on block. It's active throughout the entire jump. It shortens his jump trajectory. It can be difficult to anti-air. But if you anti-air this thing, notice how this move is a forced punish counter. This was a change they made back in like season 2, I want to say. DJ's jump down light kick is still a really good move that you see all the time. But this nerf actually gave it like a good sense of risk reward because you actually get a fat punish if you read it correctly. I just think they should apply this exact same effect to like all moves which alter your jump trajectory. If you're going to try and up forward and make my anti-air whiff, you should be taking on a lot of risk in exchange for that. But right now I just feel like the forced knockdown state just doesn't lead to enough reward. I don't know. Chat seems to very strongly disagree with me on this one, and I have to admit that this does seem like a very Aki player coded change, but I just think that dive kicks and, in general, moves that alter your air trajectory to try and make your anti-airs whiff should have more of a guaranteed punish if your opponent misspaces them. That's just me. That's just my opinion. Anyway, let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and I will see you guys all in the next video.